Welcome back once again. My name is Mr. Nicholas Mutinda from Nairobi branch. We are continuing on chapter 4 of organizing. Remember, we are still on discussing about principles of management. And we are continuing with chapter 4. This is the second video of chapter 4. We have already covered the first 3 subtopics in the previous video. You can look for it if you have not watched it. It is called Organizing 1. Organizing 1. This video is Organizing 2. The other one is Organizing 1. So, welcome. We are going to continue where we left. Organizational structure and their uses. And remember, my name is Mr. Nicholas Mutinda from Nairobi branch. So, 4.4. Organizational structure. Structure and their uses. So, first things first, what do we mean by a structure? What is a structure? When we are talking about an organizational structure, what do we mean by an organizational structure? Probably, is this laptop a structure? Is this camera a structure? Is this class a structure? Is the building a structure? Is the desk a structure? Is the chair a structure? Definitely all those are structures. So what do we mean by a structure? A structure is simply a framework. A structure is simply a framework. So when we talk about an organizational structure, we simply mean what is the framework of the organization. What is the framework of the organization? The framework of the organization, this organization has 4 departments. That is the framework of the organization. This organization has 5 departments. This department, what is the structure of this department? This department has 3 subsections. This is accounting and finance department. But it has a finance section. It has an accounting section. It has an auditing section. That is the framework of that department. So, organizational structure is simply a framework for getting things done. A framework showing the relationships, showing the units, showing the functions, showing the departments, showing the divisions of the organization. Formally, a structure of an organization can be regarded as a framework for getting things done. It consists of units, functions, divisions, departments, and formally constituted work teams into which activities related to particular processes, products, markets, customers, geographical areas are grouped in. Now, look at this. Look at this. This is organizational structure. Organizational structure. Here we have the MD. Here we have the finance and accounting. Here we have the marketing. Here we have the human resource management. Here we have the production. The accounting has 3 subsections: finance, auditing, and accounting. Marketing, we have probably 2 departments, sales and marketing. HRM, we have 2 departments, back office, front office. Production, we have probably 3 sections, line 1 and line 2. Now, when we talk about organizational structure consisting of units, this is 1 unit. Probably the business is not big enough to have several units. But if we have, it has several business units. For instance, Equity Group of Companies, it has Equity Avia. That is a separate business unit. We have Equity Kenya. That is a separate business unit. We have Equity Tanzania. That is a separate business unit. Now, in this structure, we have only one unit. Now, what are the functions? It consists of units, functions. These are functions of finance and accounting. Because this department does with those functions which are related. Now, these are another function. Because it is doing the functions of marketing. This is another function, human resource management. And now this is another function of production, whereby it is, since probably the production is very big, it can't be supervised by one production manager. They had to split it into several lines of production. So we have line 1 of production and line 2 of production. Now, these are the functions. Functions of management, marketing, functions of production, functions of marketing, functions of finance and accounting. When we talk about divisions is when the business is divided into several divisions based on the products. This is, for instance, you walk to EABL, East African Breweries, you find there is a division for Pilsner, there is a division for Guinness, there is a division for Tusker, there is a division for keg, depending on the nature of the organization. When you are talking about department, these are departments. When you talk constituted work teams are related to particular processes. What are the processes that you are doing? These are the processes. You might find, walk into another organization and you find, since that organization is duty, its nature of operations is regarded as doing projects. For instance, you walk into the Ministry of Roads of Infrastructure, you find there are several projects. So this one is divided in projects in this, project A, project B, project C. Now that is what we are calling, now in that context, you'll find the organizational structure is divided according to the projects that the organization is implementing. You will find other organizational structures depending on the markets. For instance, when you are talking about Coca-Cola, you will find there is an organizational structure for the African market, for Asian markets, for Central Africa markets, for Europe markets. You come into Africa, you find there is an organizational structure for East Africa markets, Central Africa markets, Southern Africa markets, Northern Africa markets, because it is structured according to the markets. Now, you will find in another organizations, depending on the nature, where organizational structure is structured along customers. Along customers. Whom are you serving? High end, low end, middle end. For instance, when you walk into organizations that deal with real estate, you might find that they are working, they are implementing projects, one for the high-end market, other one for the low-end market, and the other one for the middle-end middle. and market. So, depending on the market they are working, depending on the professional disciplines, that is what we are calling how are they structured, depending on these units, depending on the business units, depending on the functions, depending on the divisions, depending on the departments, depending on the formally constituted work teams. So in a nutshell, an organizational structure is a framework showing the relationships of employees, the relationships of duties and responsibilities, the relationships between business units, between departments, between divisions, between units, functions, divisions, departments, and formally work constituted teams. What is that framework showing all those? Now, different organizations have different structures depending on the nature and the kind of work they are doing, depending on the size of the organization. A kiosk might probably have just a very simple structure: the manager, because he's the owner, he's the cashier, he's the purchaser, he's in charge of accounting, he's the auditor, and probably is being assisted by his wife. So, having said that, that is the definition of, we are not required, but that is what we mean by an organizational structure. Now, what are the factors that affect organizational structure? What are the factors affecting organizational structure? And number one is what we call size. And we have talked about kiosk, we have talked about multinational. So when an organization is very big, definitely it requires an elaborate structure to serve it, to ensure there is efficiency, to ensure there is effectiveness. But when an organization is very small, it requires a very simple organizational structure. So size of the organization determines the organizational structure, the kind of organizational structure available to that organization or that organization adopts. Number two is what we call technology. What is the biggest country? What is the biggest organization in the world? It's called Amazon, followed by Google, Facebook, Yahoo, Apple, the Doris. When you come to Kenya, what are the biggest organizations? Safaricom. Now, one thing about this is they all use technology. So you will find that Facebook, especially everyone, almost everyone in Kenya has a Facebook account. Those who are above 18 and those who are Y and Z generation, they have a Facebook account. But where is the Facebook office in Kenya? Where is the Facebook office in Africa? Yet it is serving all those others. But because of technology, it has a very simple organizational structure. So, depending on the technology available, depending on the technology being used in the production or the service in the operations of an organization, it will determine the level of the type of organizational structure used or adapted by that organization. Where there is a higher level of technology, they don't require a big organizational structure. They require a very simple organizational structure because they are being served by a high level of technology. Number three is the nature of operations. What are you involved in? What are you involved in? Are you doing service? Are you doing production? Are you doing production? Take for instance, we are talking about Facebook, nature of operations. Take, for instance, Facebook and Coca-Cola. They are all multinationals. They are operating all over the world. But can Coca-Cola operate without an elaborate organizational structure? No, it can't. Because it deals with goods and services. So there must be somebody in charge of Kenyan market. There must be somebody, and you come to the Kenyan market, you find the market is even divided. Who is going to service and send east? Mount Kenya region, northern region, Nairobi region, eastern region, coastal region, western region, Nyanza region. Because of the nature, when we are talking about services, probably services are being done by simple structures. But when you're talking about goods and services, there must be an elaborate structure because the goods need to reach at the lowest level of the market. And they have to reach there physically. Wezi kunywa soda kwa online, lakini unaweza angalia Facebook online. Wezi kunywa bia online, lazima iletewe mpaka kwa kijiji yenu uipate hapo. So lazima somebody be in charge of that. That's why you are talking about the nature of the business. The environment you're operating in. Environment you're operating in. How is the environment? What is the environment you're operating in? What are your customers do? What are your competitors doing? What do customers require? What are the government policies? The environment. The other one is human resources. Are you dealing with skilled workers or expertise or unskilled workers? Because when we talk about unskilled workers, they require an elaborate organizational structure. They must be supervised for them to work. But if you are talking about working with professionals, people who are highly skilled, they can do their work without supervision. Can do their work without supervision. Then probably the strategy. Anyway, what are the types of organizational structures we have? Types of organizational structures. Probably I think I have explained, but then we can group them. Types of organizational structures. Number one is what we call divisional structures. Here we are talking about geographical region. We'll talk about the issue I was talking about Coca-Cola. You will find that now in the Kenyan market they have divided. This division is in charge of multi-Kenya market. This division is in charge of coast market. This division is in charge of western market. This is in charge of Nyanza market. This is in charge of northern market. This is in charge of Nairobi region market. Divisions. Geographical areas. The other one is what we call functional structures. And these are definitely, what are the functions? Based on functions. These guys are doing HRM functions. So there is an HRM department. These guys are doing marketing department, marketing functions. So there is a marketing function. These guys are doing production. So there is a depending on the functions of each group. You divide the organization according to functions. These guys, remember we talked about identifying the objectives, and then you identify the tasks and activities done. So you have identified the functions of these. So you group the organization according to the functions. Marketing department, because it's doing functions related to marketing. This is doing functions related to production, so they are doing production. These are doing functions related to finance, so they are doing finance department. The next one is what we call what? Product structure. Product structure. Products. I talked about the ABL. Product structure. Product. What is the product? You find out, you go into ABA, East African Breweries Limited, you will find Pilsner, you will find Tusker, you find spirits, keg. Now there are departments in charge of this. There are departments in charge of this because of the product. Because of the product. Or geographical structure. I talked about divisions. Divisions was about what? Divisions is probably when you are talking about the organization, the business is divided into divisions. So this is the branches. Geographical structure is more related to divisions. Now, the other one is what we call matrix. Matrix. And matrix is a mixture. A matrix is a mixture. Probably between products and function. Probably between the products and division. Probably between a function and division. Probably between what? Markets and products. Whereby you find there is a mixture. Yes, there is a branch in Kakamega. There is a branch in Kakamega. There are departments there in Kakamega. These guys are reporting to the head of that branch and also to the head office if you are talking about marketing. Because remember, marketing, if you are talking about marketing, especially for equity, you find there is a marketing manager in charge of Equity Kenya. So these guys are reporting to two bosses because it is a mixture between functions and divisions. You follow what the branch says, and also you follow what the head office says, head of marketing says. It's a mixture. You may talk about a product and a function. We are dealing with Pilsner. That is a product. But we are also doing what? Reporting to the accounts department. Because somebody has to come and audit what we are doing. So it is a mixture. It is a mixture. It's not defined. It is a mixture of either two, of all three, as explained. Now, having said that, those are the few, just a few types of organizational structure. You can look at quickly roles of organizational structure. Roles of organizational structure. or uses of organizational structure. Number one, it increases efficiency. Efficiency and effectiveness. It increases efficiency and effectiveness. You can look at the organization. It increases efficiency. It increases efficiency. You can imagine where there are organizational structures, how the organization works. For instance, look at Coca-Cola operating in Africa, in the whole of Africa, in the whole of Europe, in the whole of the world. How will it operate without the organizational structure? It increases efficiency and effectiveness. It enhances experience. Skills, and expertise. When you are talking about expertise, when you are talking about enhancing skills, enhancing experience, we are simply saying each employee is placed where he can perform best. Remember, when we are talking about the benefits of organizing in the video 1, in organization 1, we said that if an employee is well suited to work as a chef, he will work as a chef. If an employee is suited to work as a marketer, he will work as a marketer. If an employee can do well in accounting, he will be placed in accounting. And now you find that employees are placed where they are able to enhance their skills, where they are able to exploit their potential, where they are able to exploit their skills, where their expertise is much needed, where they can work better. That is where they are placed. So when you have an organizational structure, you place employees where they can harness their experience, their skills, and their expertise. Number 3, it enhances decision making. Enhances decision making. Look at the diagram we drew. This is guy in charge of. Look at the Department of Finance and Accounting, where we had 3 subsections: auditing, accounting, and finance. So a decision under finance department is done by the subsection head of finances. If that decision cannot be made, then that guy escalates his ire to the finance director. If the finance director is not able to take a decision, then we move to what? To the MD. Instead of waiting for the MD to come and do a decision for the subsection of what? Of finance, we can make decisions at the finance subsection. That responsibility has been delegated, authority has been delegated. Instead of waiting for the MD for you to acquire a tissue paper, you can do it under the subsection. So you find decision making is made easy. Decision making is made easy. Another thing is that there is effective communication. It enhances effective communication. It enhances effective communication. Look at the way the diagram I drew. So the MD has some information that is supposed to be passed up to the lowest level in the organization. So he passes that information to the departmental heads. The departmental heads passes that information to the section heads. Section heads passes that information to the employees. There's something that needs to reach to the MD from the lowest level. The lowest level, the passes it to the accounts clerk. The accounts clerk passes it to the accountant. The accountant passes it to what? To the finance director. The finance director passes it to the MD. There is effective communication. There is a flow of communication. Because if there is no, how will you pass the information? How will you pass the information? It enhances span of control. I talked about span of control. You can be able to ensure that you supervise only people, the number of employees that you can supervise quite comfortably. Right. Now, that is all about organizational structure. So we need to look at delegation of authority. Delegation of authority. When you are talking about delegation of authority, we simply mean delegation of authority. 4.5 delegation of authority. What do we mean? We simply mean that temporary transfer of authority and responsibility. You are in charge of this, but since you can't do everything for the organization, you transfer that authority to somebody else. You transfer temporarily, so that guy will be working on your behalf. You can't sign every check, so you transfer that authority to the accountant. You can't be checking every invoice now and then, so you transfer that to what? To the accounts clerk. The accounts clerk checks whether were the goods delivered, yes. So he signs the check, and then he brings it to you. He confirms that the goods were received, so he signs and you pay. Transfer of authority. Transfer of authority. Delegation of authority is a process by which a manager divides and assigns work to the subordinates. Yes, definitely. The manager himself only performs the task that requires special talents and expertise. You are able to transfer, to divide and assign the work to your subordinates to work on your behalf. To work on your behalf. The rest of work in this will divide and delegate to his subordinates along with the responsibilities of the manager. So you are transferring some of the authorities to your employees, to your subordinates, to ensure that the organization is able to run efficiently and smoothly. Because you can't do it, though you are in charge of the branch, you are in charge of the department, you are in charge of the branch, you can't do everything. So you delegate some authority, you delegate some tasks. You delegate some of the responsibilities to your subordinates. That is simply what we mean by what? Delegation of authority. Delegation of authority. Delegation of authority. So what are the elements of authority? Elements of delegation. Authority. The context of business organization authority can be defined as the power and the right to a person to use and allocate resources. So the elements of delegation is number one, authority. And when you talk about authority, is different, the power and the right to allocate and command and to punish, take decisions, give orders. Authority. The power to command, the power to allocate, the power to make decisions, the power to direct. That is what we are talking about authority. So when you talk about delegation, are we delegating authority? Yes. You have the right to take orders. You have to give orders. You have the right to command. You have the right to give direction. You have the right to take decisions. But you transfer that right to others. So those others will be taking decisions on your behalf. Those others will taking directions, will be commanding, will be allocating resources on your behalf. Element number 1, authority. Element number 2 is what we call responsibility. Responsibility. And responsibility simply means a duty that you have been allocated and you can be questioned. So, are you transferring that to other people? Ensure that these exams are done perfectly. You have given that responsibility to another person. It was yours, but you have now delegated that responsibility to others. So somebody is doing on your behalf and he can be questioned. He's in charge. It's a duty that you can be questioned on the outcome. Responsibility. You have the responsibility to ensure that these people are working, all the checks that are being signed, their goods and services, the goods were actually delivered. To ensure that payments are only for goods that were delivered. That has a responsibility. Another element is accountability. Accountability is whereby you are being questioned. So another element is accountability. Explanations for any variance in the actual performance and the expectations set. So you have given, you have transferred, you have delegated accountability. Ensure that employees here report at 8 and leave at 5. You are accountable for that department. You have delegated that accountability. So you will not be questioned if employees come at work at 9. Already you have delegated that accountability. Somebody is in charge. Somebody will be questioned. So you see, in that case now, that is what we call, that is basically what we call delegation. And delegation simply means just 3 steps: assigning of duties, granting authority, and creating responsibility and accountability. As simple as that. You assign the duties. You assign the duties to your subordinates. You create an authority. Give them authority. Ensure that they have enough authority. And then create a responsibility and accountability whereby they can be questioned if things don't move as required. If things don't move as required. And I think that is all about delegation of authority. That is all about delegation of authority. Now, 4.6, the last subtopic. 4.6, the last subtopic. Centralization and decentralization. And when we are talking about centralization, we are simply talking about this. This is the organization. This is the MD. Now, this is the power. Decentralization is dispersing the power of the MD to the outer spaces, to the periphery. Because now, this is the MD. Now is dispersing power to departments, finance, or to, let's say, branches. This is Kisumu branch. Let's say you are an insurance operating the Kisumu branch. You are also operating in Machakos. You are also operating in Kakamega. You are also operating in Meru. You are also operating in where? Mombasa. You are also operating in Malindi. Now, centralization is when all these people, all the power at Malindi, everything that is done by Machakos, everything that is done by Kakamega, all has to be decided at the center. That is what we are calling centralization. All the powers at Kisumu, all the decisions in Meru, all the decisions in Kakamega, all the decisions in Machakos, all the decisions in Kisumu have to be made at the center. That is what we are calling centralization. Now, decentralization is the opposite of centralization, whereby the decisions are devolved, are delegated to the periphery. The Kisumu, Malindi, Machakos, Kakamega, Meru, and Mombasa can make their own decisions. They don't depend on the headquarters for them to buy tissue papers. There is decentralization. When there is a problem at Mombasa, Mombasa will make decisions depending on the environment and the circumstances they are in. Kisumu will make their decisions depending on their circumstances. But under decentralization, everything is done at the headquarters. We buy tissue papers and we disperse them to the branches. We want to employ a tea girl, the MD must approve. Sukari imeisha kule Kisumu, lakini lazima MD aseme ndio sukari inunuliwe. There is centralization of power. There is centralization of authority. There is centralization of decisions. You depend on the headquarters for you to transfer one employee from this department to the next. The people in Kisumu cannot do that. The manager at Meru cannot do that. He must wait for the MD to transfer this employee from this department to that one. Centralization and decentralization. But when you are talking about decentralization, that power is dispersed. You delegate that power, so you find Machakos can make their own decisions, can allocate their own resources, can make their products, can produce their products, can set their products, can utilize their resources, can do everything on their behalf, on their own, because power is decentralized. Authority is decentralized. You don't depend on the headquarters. You don't depend on the headquarters. You don't depend on the headquarters. Centralization and decentralization. So, centralization is where the concentration of decision making is in a few hands. We are talking about the headquarters. All important decisions and actions at the lower level, all subjects and actions at the lower level are subject to approval of the top management. That we have discussed. On the other hand, decentralization is a systematic delegation of authority to all levels of management. Yes. If you are talking about departments, at the lowest level each. Remember what we talked about, the diagram with the organizational structure we do. So there is the MD, the finance and accounting department. We have this finance department subsection. We have the accounting subsection and the subsection of auditing. So auditing can make their own decisions. Accounting can make their own decisions. Finance can make their own decisions, provided they work in tandem to ensure that the organizational objectives are followed. Organizational objectives are achieved. There are guidelines. So you delegate authority at all levels. That is what we call decentralization. That is what we are calling decentralization. Now, I think that is all about decentralization. What is the impact of decentralization? There is less burden on the chief executive and the top management. I think that is something we can talk about. What is the impact? Less burden, get a chance to decide and act independently. It encourages diversification. It encourages diversification. You can't, uko Kisumu, kuna viti ambazo zimetengenezwa huko vizuri, lakini lazima mwezi nunua kule, lazima atimngoje itoke Nairobi. Yet za Nairobi si mzuri. Diversification. Anyway, factors determining the degree of centralization and decentralization. The costs of the decisions, especially where the decisions are very sensitive. That's where you find this centralization. So if when you are talking about decisions, it's very costly to the organization. Definitely it has to come from top. The desire for uniformity of policy. That leads to what? To centralization. Because factors determine the degree of centralization or decentralization. Size and character of the organization. What is the size and character of the organization? If the organization is very big, for instance, Coca-Cola cannot have a centralized decision making. The market in South Africa is not they're not the same way the market in Kenya. In Kenya, the market in Northeastern is not the same way as the market in Nairobi. They are different. Because size and character of the organization. If the organization is very big, definitely it will have a decentralization. What is the character of the organization? Do people follow guidelines? Where people do not follow guidelines, definitely there will be centralization in order to ensure that the guidelines are followed from the head office. History, desire for independence. Do you have the organization? Does it have desire for independence? Can Kisumu branch be independent? Can this other be independent? Availability of managers, control techniques, decentralization performance, business dynamics. What are the business dynamics? What is the environment you're operating in? Does it allow for decentralization? Depending on the nature of the competition you are facing. What are those? So advantages for centralization: cost efficient. Centralization, cost efficient is very cost. Better command, you can be able to command employees from the top. You can centralize when you are buying in bulky, you get discounts because you are buying in bulky. Cost efficient. Proper coordination, there is proper coordination because you are getting everything now and then. You are the one who is in charge. Focus on vision. You are able to focus on vision. You are able to focus on vision. The next one is it enhances work on quality. It enhances work on quality. Then what are the disadvantages? Slow down operations, delays decision making. It is very tedious. decision making it delays. Something that can take probably 20 minutes ends up taking 7 hours because you have to confirm from the MD, from the headquarters. Reduces scope of specialization. There is no scope of specialization because everybody is doing other things. And then lastly, it lacks adaptability to change, overburden to top management, it leads to bureaucratic leadership. And that is a problem. That is a problem of bureaucracy. Then there is poor upward communication. Rarely will you find where there is centralization, effective communication, especially from up to down, from down to up. It's very poor. Now, I think that is all about organizing. That is all about organizing. This is the second video, so if you have not watched the first one, kindly look for it. Organizing one by Mr. Nicholas Mutinda. It is called Organization 1 by Nicholas Mutinda. Look for it if you have not seen it. Thank you for watching. Bye. If you have not subscribed, kindly subscribe. See you in the next video of staffing. Thank you.